welcome to the Chorus One podcast. We have another exciting episode today. We have Rachel from Solayer with us, and we'll get it kicked off now. I lead ventures at Chorus One. I'll be one of the hosts today, but we also have Cam here. So I'll let Cam introduce himself, and then we'll get to you, Rachel, and get this episode on the way.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Cam, part of the research team at Chorus One, and currently spending a lot of time in restaking in general, and also leading our restaking effort for Chorus One. So super happy to be here and to have you on the podcast, Rachel.
Awesome. My name is Rachel, and I contribute to Solayer, mostly around products, all the way to go-to-market, and everything encompassing in between. Super excited to be working with Chorus. Have worked obviously on a product level, and excited to be chatting here as well.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome, and thanks for taking the time. Maybe we can kick it off by getting to know you a bit better, kind of your history, why you got into crypto. Would be awesome to learn a bit more, and then kind of your journey into Solayer, why you guys started it, kind of, how that whole story came to be.
Sure. I guess, crypto in general was this very, almost like a mysterious industry. Like nobody, if you walk around your friends, you're like, what do you do? You're like, I'm in crypto. And they're like, what is that? I think that was the era that I was in crypto. It was very interesting because, so I guess back then, previous to Solayer, I was in the core team at sUSD, which is a decentralized exchange on Ethereum, but now is multi-chain, everywhere. I think the whole ethos around crypto is really giving freedom to everyone and anyone around the world through decentralization and abstraction of the middleman layer. And I think this vision is really manifested at my time at sUSD, but also, we're hoping to bring this to Solayer as well. I guess like a little more background. I studied at Berkeley for electrical engineering. So a lot of what I'm interested in is actually crypto, but also, I guess, two other things. Super interested in robotics and brain-computer interface. And that was a lot of what I actually focused on during school time. And then I guess I had left school after discovering the wonders of the real world, and now here we are.
Too early for the brain-computer interface, but early enough for crypto.
Too early for PCI, correct.
Awesome. No, sounds great. I would love to learn a bit more how Solayer got started. We obviously been working with you guys for a bit. Maybe you can tell us a bit more kind of what inspired it, and also, was there any specific gap on Solana that you guys saw, while you're building on Solana? So I would be keen to learn a bit more about kind of the story of how Solayer came to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Jason and I basically met each other 3 years ago at this through this friend who does horseback riding. And I think, so he also went to Berkeley. And then the both of us were just like, what is an interesting thing to build? And I guess two things. What is an interesting thing to build in crypto? And second, will crypto ever reach mass adoption? And him and I still share the very same, philosophy and first principles. And that's still the culture at Solayer today, which is first, the protocol itself has to make revenue, which means it actually delivers value that people want to pay. And the second one is that it's going to last as long as crypto exists. So I think back then, we looked at various things. First, across the landscape of blockchain in general, you have, we see blockchain as almost this open internet that anybody can build any types of systems and applications on top for anybody to use. So Ethereum and Solana are obviously the most forward thinking, but also most adopted chains right now. And restaking at the time, it's a very interestingly but also loosely defined term. I think even today, not everybody knows what it is. And for us, looking across the landscape of both, now we also have Babylon, right, which is on Bitcoin. Across all, I think Solana presents the most advantageous sort of engineering, technical architecture, but also you have it's almost the only chain where you have more users than developers. So that's where we saw like a big opportunity from a market perspective, that you want to be building where you have users. And that's kind of why we selected Solana. You also had a bunch of other teams back then, trying to become the first Solana restaking protocol. For us, I think it was really good timing, but at the same time, like for what we wanted to do is how can we build something that actually made sense on Solana? So a lot of the initial infrastructure isn't just about copy and pasting what EigenLayer did, but rather building a complete new standard of restaking that actually solves some of the biggest issues on Solana. And we see that being network congestion and optimization. So that is actually a lot of what we focus on, is internal, optimizing the current existing blockchain of Solana. Where EigenLayer is more so focused on, there's a bunch of L2s, bridges, oracles, and how can we use ETH as the share security layer. So.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. You already kind of answered parts of my next question, and we'll dive into kind of the architecture of Solayer and how everything works in a bit. But you already mentioned EigenLayer. I mean, obviously we've seen huge influxes of TVL being restaked on Ethereum. Yeah, I don't know the current data. Cam may know more, but it's billions and billions of capital that got restaked. And so it felt like a natural progression that other networks that may be maturing as well, like Solana, have something similar, or at least people are thinking about how restaking could be used to improve those networks. Was there anything else on Solana specifically why you guys you already went into this a little bit, kind of why you guys chose it, and how Solayer kind of facilitates restaking, especially kind of compared to EigenLayer a little bit more and the restaking landscape on Ethereum? Because I think, you mentioned there's a few protocols that were trying to kind of tackle restaking on Solana. We've seen a few different designs as well, but I mean, you guys have been crushing it so far. So I'd love to learn a bit more about that. And then I think we'll dive in with Cam into some more of the specifics of the Solayer protocol.
Mm-hmm. So I think on the point of having billions of TVL, I don't know if, Chase is going to kill me for saying this, but I think, so internally, we think TVL is a great metric as a protocol. But we also do think that TVL, there's two types of TVL. One is healthy, the other one is debt. So I think as an industry, even finance in general, we've got to understand that as soon as you accept liquidity in, the platform itself or the manager, right, itself has to understand how do you in a healthy way produce or compound the interest or bring more utilization towards this TVL. Or liquidity. So I think for us, we're very cautious about how much liquidity we want to have and what is the mechanism we could build to produce long-term sustainable yields and utility for the liquidity coming in. So, right now we're at almost 300 million in assets secured, and everybody's earning sustainably on 8.17% base Solana yield. And that was a very strategic decision that we made in the beginning to build the base infrastructure that, of stake pool, of validated infrastructure. So right now, for example, all the SOL that's been staked, we essentially diversify across the highest performing validators. Chorus One actually is also one that we work with, right? To make sure that they've received the highest earned interest. So I think compared to other protocols, it's either in the form of injecting their own rewards or, that's it, right? So so I think that's on the part of TVL. And on the second part of what our infrastructure is, we've kind of broken down restaking into two camps or two layers. One is internal, and the other one is external. So restaking by nature is you stake to secure the base chain, which in our case is Solana, and then you restake to secure on-chain or off-chain systems. So not only is it off-chain that we're adding, we're also innovating on the on-chain aspect. So people, when they stake to secure Solana, they can also delegate to endogenous AVSs, which are on-chain systems that can range from DeFi protocols to wallets to exchanges that are centralized to decentralized. So anybody literally that touches a Solana, right, can receive stake delegation. And what it does is almost a combination of block space marketplace and stake with quality of service. And on Solana, you have this QoS system where you receive stake, and you essentially get priority in terms of being able to, at a validator level currently, being able to be elected as a leader to sequence transactions and broadcast them. And then on our side, we're essentially abstracting that away into the application level, where applications can receive stake. And they would broadcast transactions to us, and essentially we tag them with stake to accelerate. So in a sense, you're almost like every single sol is a unit of block space. And with more sol that's been dedicated and delegated to this application or system, they almost have their own reserved block space lane. And that's kind of what we envision for endogenous AVS. And the second one is we're also introducing sUSD, which is the first Solana-native yield-bearing stablecoin, or RWA-backed synthetic stablecoin that can also be used to secure off-chain systems. And the vision here is, okay, we have Ethereum and Solana as the base layer. We have Sol and ETH. Sol currently is at a market cap of maybe 80 billion. But when we're talking about the real world, right, that's like trillions and trillions of assets that we're about to onboard. And in itself, we envision the future of decentralized system being secured by the real worlds, right? Like the first layer is Treasury Bill. And we see that as a lot, way more meaningful and impactful, both to Solana, which means Solana as the first layer is where it onboards real world assets. And second, we use these real world assets to secure the future of decentralized systems. So I think these two are like the two that we want to focus on. Yeah, I guess what differentiates us from others.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and yeah, I wanted to chat a bit more about that. How Solayer differentiates itself from other like restaking protocols, especially on Solana. And yeah, something that was very interesting in my opinion was this distinction between two different types of AVSs. And on your side, you're like, at least for a first step, focusing quite a lot on endogenous AVSs. And could you maybe explain a bit more? What kind of like partners are you working with currently at the moment? And I'm also quite curious about your opinion about, external AVSs. How do you see this market on Solana? Do you see potentially, external projects being secured by Solana? How do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So on endogenous AVS, almost every single application that interacts with Solana could become an Indo AVS, and eventually we'll make this permissionless. So I'll maybe just highlight Sonic SVM. Sonic SVM is a gaming-based L2 on Solana, and so I guess how it works is users, as someone with Sol, I can come and stake, and I can delegate to Sonic SVM. So currently Sonic has about 50 million delegated to them, and so Sonic is also broadcasting all their transactions to our endpoint, and we essentially relay those transactions to validators with stake, with $50 million worth of stake, right, to accelerate those transactions. So the second part is today, actually, we're making Sonic AVS liquid, and essentially it also shares the entire liquidity pool of what Solayer liquidity has, or SSol. Solayer Sol liquidity has. And so the liquidity is fully interoperable and across all the AVSs that we set up. And what could happen is Sonic AVS can also become an inherent liquid restaking token to secure their own other sets of features, whether it's bridge or their own L2 even. And outside of that, even other types of off-chain systems or external systems. So both Sonic could be secured in terms of their settlement layer, in terms of settling on Solana to accelerate those transactions, but also their off-chain and eventually additional networks that could be secured by Sonic. So that's kind of the design that we're seeing and we want to build at Solayer. As for external systems, we're definitely working with a bunch with sUSD. So Terminal Network, soon Zeus Network are the ones that we're actually launching with. And super excited about these projects as well in terms of a proliferation of the SVM world and also adopting sUSD, which is inherently real world backed as a proof of stake collateral asset. So imagining using Treasury Bill to back their systems. So I think we're super excited about that.
Yeah, no, totally. That's actually super valuable. Maybe to chat a bit more about the application itself for those who didn't interact with Solayer yet. Can you explain a bit more, the user flow and maybe what are the benefit for a user to restake with Solayer? What kind of incentives can they get?
Mm-hmm. So basically, it's extremely simple. Maybe this one I'll use BigGet as an example. BigGet is also one of our endogenous AVSs that's been set up that's also making their token liquid. So BigGet is broadcasting a lot of their transactions to us in terms of tagging their stake, right, to those transactions. So basically, if I'm a user, I have two assets, Sol and USDC on Solana. I can come here, go to app.solayer.org, and literally there is a portal to stake, and I'm able to stake Sol and receive as Sol. And secondly, I'm able to delegate. So there's a delegation tab, which is a list of different AVSs that you can delegate to. In the future, we'll make this as easy as, one click, right? If I wanted to stake with Sol, I can just directly stake and directly go delegate in one transaction. And so that's how it works for endogenous AVS. Obviously, there's a lot of as a user, it's easy as that, but underlying, there's a lot of infrastructure level, which I think with validators and with even Chorus One, I think there's a lot of other things that we have to eventually complete the sort of seamless integration, which involves even validators looking at the transactions with tagging with stake weights. So as a user with Sol, that's easy as that. And then with sUSD, what happens is I am on Solana, I have USDC, I can essentially stake into sUSD. Currently, it takes about 1 day max to receive sUSD because of the treasury bill that's been minted in transit. And with sUSD, I'm able to delegate to node operators. So again, here's where we work with Chorus One, and the node operators essentially work with exogenous AVSs in terms of the logic behind reward and slashing. So that's kind of on the sUSD side.
On the sUSD side, we've talked about it a couple of times now, and you kind of high level mentioned how it works as well. But could you work us through the flow again, kind of how the whole system is set up, and what was the thinking behind kind of you mentioned a few partners that you have there as well, like how you're using them? Because I think it's actually obviously there has been some attempts to bring T-bills and other kind of real world assets on chain. But I think utilizing restaking as well is quite an interesting way. And so I'd love to learn a bit more about kind of sUSD specifically, right? You recently announced the launch of it. I would love to learn a bit more about like kind of the system behind it. I think you scraped on top of that a little bit a couple times now, so you may be repeating some parts, but yeah, kind of just understand how the flow, how it works on the back end as well, and kind of the benefits that it brings, apart from obviously just having the security of outside capital coming in.
Sure. So for sUSD, I'm thinking about what is the best way to. So I think stablecoin in general is probably the most compelling product that is the first real world asset, but also the only one of the most compelling instruments to even bring the entire industry to mainstream. And currently the two dominating assets or stablecoins are USDC and USDT. Both are essentially one-to-one pegged, and that's it, right? So at Solayer, basically, we think a stablecoin needs to be productive. If I'm holding it on chain, it's able to be not only user-owned, not only borderless, but also interest earning, so yield bearing. And the second one is utility rich, meaning that I can use the USD or stablecoin in different scenarios, not just payments. So sUSD is designed to be fully permissionless and decentralized. And I know a lot of people throw this around, but what does it really mean is I am someone with USDC, I'm able to instantly mint and instantly redeem. The sUSD, that's also treasury bill backed. So currently, if I look across the landscape, I'm not able to actually, as a user with $5, it's really not easy for me to access that treasury bill on chain. I have to go through, I almost have to be a fund in order to access, right? And secondly is I'm able to buy some sort of treasury bill backed stablecoin, on a bond on Curve, for example. But if I wanted to redeem, there's also no way for me to do that. So Solayer essentially wants to solve this issue at the UX level, for you to have instant mint and instant redeem. And how that is how that works is we've essentially designed a RFQ system or marketplace, request for quotes marketplace, where it almost acts as a decentralized order book. You have USDC, and you come here, we create a quote around your USDC, and through our matching engine or the marketplace matching engine, it's sent across different types of tokenizers. Tokenizers, meaning that they are tokenizing treasury bill. So essentially you, as a USDC holder, I'm essentially interacting with a marketplace or order book to receive treasury bill at the best interest or the best APY of treasury bill interest. Secondly is sUSD is also inherently yield bearing, meaning that if I'm holding sUSD on Solana, we're adopting the token 2022 interest bearing standard, which is actually the first ever to be launched on Solana. And what that means is, as a user with sUSD, I'm actually earning interest directly in USDC. And I don't have to stake or mint. So almost like there's no protocol literally in the entire blockchain right now where I'm able to directly earn USDC or earn treasury bill earn treasury bill interest at all. I have to either stake it or mint another token, right? So what happens is when people want to redeem sUSD back to USDC, they essentially see more USDC in their accounts. So these two levels are the optimization around user experience. Like anybody with USDC should be instantly able to access treasury bill directly in USDC. So last one is building multi-utility around a stablecoin. So not only can you use stablecoin as payment, as collateral, as using in DeFi to earn more interest, but I'm also able to use sUSD, which behind the scene is literally treasury bill, to secure systems that are decentralized. So we're looking at bridges, oracles, L2s that essentially build with proof of stake collateral our proof of stake consensus mechanism. And behind the scene, we're using sUSD/treasury bill as the collateral asset to secure these systems. So in this case, sUSD is also a proof of stake collateral asset that users can use to earn additional reward yield, but at the same time, staying completely yield bearing with treasury bill interest. So yeah, I guess like that's a high level breakdown of sUSD.
No, that's super interesting. I mean, also on the Chorus One Venture side, we've seen a lot of projects over the last few months, kind of coming out of emerging markets, working on some kind of yield-bearing stablecoin design. And so it's super interesting that you guys decided to launch something like this. Talking about kind of global and borderless financial system where anyone can get access even at smaller amounts to kind of T-bills while having the security that it's a stable coin and not the inherent volatility that a lot of the crypto assets have. So a very interesting design and yeah, pretty cool that you guys launched this.
For sure.
Yeah, I might have maybe just one question to talk a bit more about Solana, because like one big force of Solana is its community. Obviously, like a lot of people are super excited of Solana. They have like a lot of like good developers and so on. I'm just curious to know how is Solayer, engaging with the Solana community. I'm wondering also what are like the specificities of the Solana community. How do you guys interact with the Solana community?
Mm-hmm. So I think the differentiation between Ethereum and Solana culture is Solana is almost like high school, college versus college versus work, like the workspace, right? Corporate and college. Almost everybody's just having fun and building. So I think for us, I mean, candidly speaking, when we started Solayer, everybody's like, "Oh wow, you've got to have a professor on your team," and then we were just like, "No, that's really not who we are. Like, personally, at least for myself, I think I've definitely been an operator in crypto, and all of our team have been operators in crypto for a long time, and literally, like when we started at Sushi, right? Like, there's no professor, there's no everybody is just really like, we want to contribute towards the vision of decentralization, and everybody got around in Discord. Same thing for Solayer. I think like we almost see ourselves as like basement hackers. I feel like I'm literally in a basement right now, and really hacking things, right? Like we've literally shipped nonstop over the past 6 months, and I think we've delivered a lot more than any other protocols. So I think in the beginning it was interesting, and we chose Solana specifically for the culture as well. And a lot of builders on Solana are very young, very interesting, and obviously almost the same, right, as what I described, like basement hackers almost. So the culture itself, I think, is very founder-led. So Anatoly, he's still very much like in the trenches, educating users, educating developers, but also talking about Solana and the future developments, like very, very actively on Twitter and everywhere, right? And I think Ethereum is the same. Like there's a lot of merits and a lot of great things about Ethereum, but I think Solana, what I'm super excited about is that people are really in the trenches and they're founder-led. So our team is also extremely founder-led. Like literally Jason pushed like 5,000 lines of code as of the past 3 days. Right. I think it's a lot less on this just pure research, but really pushing products towards the users and delivering value. So, going back to the 2 principles that we talked about, right? Like, how can we build something that's revenue generating, but also lasting as long as blockchains exist? So I think that's why Solana, you have the most users. It's where you want to stand the closest with users. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, right, everyone's talking about the meme coin trading and so on Solana and what's going on over there, but the fact of the matter is there is a lot of users and they're willing to try things out and they're willing to experiment. And, you mentioned sushi before. In that sense, it does remind me a little bit of like, the earlier Ethereum days when the DeFi summer and so on happened and people were just like excited to try out new things. Doesn't matter what it was. They're like, trying to dig in, are in the trenches, trying to learn new protocols, what's going on here, what can I do? And so I think in that sense, it was probably a great choice for you guys to build around Solana, also on the user side.
Yeah, it feels very similar to DeFi Summer, and everybody in the trenches. And I just, it feels very similar to what we've had back then.
Yeah. I mean, something that I also really like on like Solana teams is they are also very product focused and they work on a lot on the user experience. And I think this is something that we can also see on Solayer because the UI is like very straightforward. It's really easy to use. Sometimes on Ethereum, they are not necessarily like super like product focus, but I feel this is something that is very specific to Solana and to Solana teams. And this is like something that we can see like straight away on Solayer. I'm curious also about something because we also talk about the role of, foundations. And I'm just wondering if you ever like interacted with the Solana Foundation in the past, how did they help you in terms of, for Solayer, in terms of like, I don't know, maybe help, marketing, communication, and so on. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Well, that's I think Solana Foundation, it's a group of just very bright, but also it's almost like everybody is a family. It's really interesting to say. I will say that, one example is in SF. So I will give a shout out to Neil here, who is on the super team and Solana Foundation side. And I just randomly pinged. So he actually invited us to speak at the super team at the Solana Foundation office in SF. And very interestingly, like ever since we've just been jamming on how can we build SF Solana community in as a community. And we've like slowly molded our ideas together. And now we're actually launching an SF ecosystem office for like Solana builders. So called Shipyard. So it's very interesting because I feel like the entire ecosystem builders just really wants to bring their teams in everywhere. So you can also see that, right? Like with a lot of different hacker houses that are held across the world. And last time we actually went to Mountain. So they held one in Salt Lake City and also they did one in Thailand and Greece. And literally they just brought everybody together to live for a month. Right. So it's very interesting how everybody just like kind of knows each other. And as a protocol that's really coming in like this year, you already feel like there's just like infinite amount of places and events you can go to meet everyone. So,
That's insane. That's super impressive, actually. Amazing. Yeah. Well, Yannick, you can go ahead if you have any questions.
Yeah, I was just about to say as well. I'm mostly based in Berlin, and I have a couple of friends also at the foundation. Some of them here, and they have the German super team as well. And the community is crazy. I mean, they're doing like these build stations as well, where they have like 3 or 4 weeks, just like a co-working space, everyone, and then usually inside ends with a hackathon. But they're like all working together and building together, and it's also nice to see that kind of you guys as now starting to become a bit more of an established and larger protocol are still kind of working and helping to support these builders. Maybe, talking about builders and the future, maybe one thing we can talk about a little bit is kind of the future of restaking on Solana, and also kind of what role you see Solayer playing there. I think on Ethereum as well, I mean, we, Cam as well on our end, we look a lot into like the different AVSs and, supporting all the different restaking protocols. But it also feels like in a lot of cases, the future is still very uncertain. And, there's been shared security concepts around for quite some time, but making these, sustainable, as you mentioned at the beginning, as well as like kind of the 2 pillars is definitely not easy. And it's a lot of different design choices you can make. So I would be keen to hear kind of your take on how do you see kind of the restaking landscape on Solana evolve and how Solayer fits into that.
So I think two things. We see Solana as the place where all the real world assets are being onboarded. And we also see Solana being the place where future-proof systems are being built. So that being said, Solayer, our vision, like regardless of what other protocols do, our vision really is how can we optimize Solana network at its core? And second, how can we bring the entire real world into Solana, right? I think those are the two things that we really want to focus on. So as for restaking itself, I think we will continue to build our standard of what restaking is, which is a little bit different from other ecosystems, and allowing people to stake once, twice. But the value proposition is really around network optimization of the internal network of Solana. And secondly, with sUSD, we also envision all types of different ideas, all types of different systems, beyond just L1 Oracle bridges, but also other types of proof of stake required systems that can leverage Solana in terms of its fast throughput, in terms of its SVM nature, but also with sUSD leveraging the real world infrastructure that we tokenize and onboard. So I think for us, we're actually more excited that the vision that we build, I think, is going to last for as long as crypto exists. I think we're also going to be delivering real value to not only the stakers, but also the application builders and developers. So I think for us, those are the two principles we follow, and we'll probably outlast in a lot of different ways.
Oh, let's hope so. Well, one other question that I had is kind of different trends you're seeing and if they become relevant for Solayer. But thinking through this a bit more, one thing I'd also be interested to hear is whether you've seen any interest of kind of teams considering restaked security on Ethereum to actually move to Solana as well. So you also mentioned that you can potentially secure, kind of off-chain and have like different types of ABSs, which is different. But I mean, also if you look on the Twitter timelines, I know Anatoly is very engaged there as well. There's always this like, ETH versus Solana, and there's a lot of like fighting going on, or let's call it discussions. And so I would say like the builders as well are also quite separate mostly, right? But we have seen quite a few people as well, jump ship or explore different ecosystems. And so I wanted to hear as well whether you see any teams that are kind of considering building on Ethereum, but then actually become interested in Solana and consider kind of moving over, or if you see any trends on Ethereum that you think or other ecosystems in generally in DeFi that you think may become relevant for restaking and Solayer as well.
Sure. So I think DePIN is vastly built on Solana. It's almost a new category that's entirely built on Solana. You also see some others that are trying to do this on Ethereum, but we're actually talking to quite a bit of DePIN protocols on Solana currently. I think PayFi is another very interesting, more like real world use cases that are also built on Solana, right? So I think these two categories are like net new categories that are, I think experimented a little bit on Ethereum, but I think mostly been flourishing in the Solana land. I guess outside of that, I really think like almost all the users are bridging their assets over, right? Like stablecoin is flourishing on Solana. All types of net, like PYUSD, for example, with sUSD, and I think Lily is very much focusing on bringing stablecoin into the Solana land as well. And why that is because it's really one of the most compelling instruments to bring Solana and the crypto industry to the masses. So yeah, I can go on and on. I feel like all categories is flourishing on Solana this cycle.
You're just massively bullish Solana here.
Exactly.
Amazing.
So something I'm quite curious about, Rachel, is to talk about a bit more about like the future of Solana over like the short, medium term. I would like to know more about your roadmap. What do you plan to work on? What are like the upcoming features that you like currently thinking about? Yeah, if you have like some alpha, we're here and listening.
Absolutely. So sUSD was going to be the the alpha, but now it's launched. So I think growing sUSD, we have like literally a spreadsheet of 300 protocols to make sure that it's fully integrated. And at the end of the day, like our vision is untethering the traditional infrastructure and untether. So I think ultimately we see a conversion. We want to see a mass conversion into sUSD and also more utility around sUSD. So allowing people to just simply hold a productive, stable asset on Solana, but also across the ecosystem. Secondly, what we're focusing on is also exogenous AVS. So, over the next couple of months, we'll very much focus on how can we allow and mentor new developers to build very interesting applications that are secured with sUSD. And Sol as well. So I think, one thing that we're even like looking at really is like, and going back to what I was talking about earlier, being my interest is robotics. So one thing that we're very interested in talking to developers right now is this concept of large world models. You have large language models, but now you have large world models where you have not just simple, language script, rather you have 3D real life moving movements that need to be trained, right, in order to be used for robotics, autonomous vehicles, and all of that. And those are like extremely hard data to collect. So using some sort of economics network effect of crypto could be very interesting to like how the future looks like, right? Really is like autonomous vehicle that we see today in SF, literally. And the Hi, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, you cut out there for a second. I was just wondering if it's on my end or not.
Yeah, I was just saying that could also be very interesting in terms of using proof of stake mechanism to
maybe you can go back slightly and we can just kind of have a cut there to kind of get the full answer because I thought it was quite interesting, but then you cut out.
I forgot what I had left off.
Maybe not start. I don't know where you cut off. I don't know where else for you, Cam, but maybe around like the large world models. Maybe start there again. I think before that,
large world models. Yes. So there's this concept of large language models, which LLMs you scrape the web. So 3 layers of training data. One, you scrape the public web, and then the second one is you have simulated data, simulating what input and output looks like. And then lastly is user contributed data. Those are somewhat relatively like what Scale AI is doing, right? Somewhat easier to do because it's language. Now the future of AI is not just language, it's almost everything, right? Like robotic, autonomous vehicle. And all of those form a new concept, which is large world model. And this world model is almost like multi-dimensional vector spaces where you have like hand moving, right? Like how my hand moving is very different from how the language is trained. So you have not just 3D, but also like multi-dimensional, right? Like vector spaces that need to be trained on. So this concept of large world model requires literal mass. You cannot just publicly scrape the data. You could simulate, but I think this concept of user contributed data is going to flourish and very much almost like needed in order to advance the future of robotics, autonomous vehicle, or anything that's related to it. So I think what I've been mostly interested in is how can crypto and AI merge in this specific area, because you need people right around the world to be incentivized to contribute their day-to-day movements in order to advance that side of the world. So I think in this regard, what we see is using crypto economic incentive and also infrastructure to accelerate almost like the robotics landscape, right? Not just pure large language models. So that's something I'm really interested in. And I don't know if there's any Web2 companies that are doing this, but I certainly think that's very interesting for the emergence of AI and crypto in this area.
That's super interesting. I feel like there's a whole kind of another episode in here just talking about that part. Maybe we'll do that some other time.
For sure.
I think we're coming up on time here already. So maybe kind of as a last question, before we wrap things up, is there kind of anything else you want to share with the listeners? Maybe also builders, how they can best kind of follow Solayer, get in touch, and so on. And yeah, maybe any other alpha or general words you want to share.
Mm-hmm. So many. So I guess build on Solana.
Floor is yours.
Talk to us and stake Sol and USDC on Solayer. That's all that we probably should say in a few sentences. But I think most importantly is one thing that I probably feel people should talk a little bit more about is how can we I guess anyways, that's probably the easiest answer that I can think of.
Okay, then we'll leave it at that. Of course, we'll add kind of the Solayer website and all this stuff into the notes and when we share this. But yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Super interesting, also with regards to sUSD, which personally I think is quite interesting angle and approach for you guys to take, and definitely something that separates you from most other restaking protocols as well. So yeah, thanks so much for taking the time and being here with us and sharing all this wisdom and all this information of yours. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Rachel.